Hey there, and welcome to That Bond Show, a That Nerdy Site show and the internet's #1 James Bond rewatch show hosted by two guys named Logan and Trevor. Probably. Join us as each week we dive through a new Bond movie from Dr. No to No Time to Die. I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson, and joining me, as always, is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
I'm Mickey Mouse. Who are you?
All right, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good pull-up for this week. Myself and Trevor are, of course, talking about Spectre, the 24th James Bond film, which was originally released October 26th of 2015. Trevor, for the last time, you could say you had never seen this movie, had no prior memories of a Bond film going into this one.
Yeah, this is officially the last Bond movie I've watched because I'd already seen No Time to Die.
That's right.
So yeah, this was my first time watching this one. And a little bit fascinating to watch it in that order, because I think before I watched No Time to Die, I'd watched one of those here's everything you need to know about Daniel Craig's Bond in 10 minutes or something like that. So I got a very, very brief Cliff Notes of this, which fortunately sets up for, obviously No Time to Die, much like Quantum of Solace, is very much like a direct continuation of the movie prior. But yeah, this was my first time watching this one, and I went in having these just atrocious expectations based on how much I know you hate this movie, and I was like, oh, Logan's bias is just showing because this movie's fine.
Yeah, we'll get into it for sure, right? I mean, I saw Spectre is interesting because obviously it came out 3 years after Skyfall, and how much that movie kind of.
I will say it's it is. Certainly does not reach the highs of Skyfall or Casino Royale.
Right. I think Quantum is a good comparison in terms of that's a drop off from where we had just kind of done. Or I mean, even going back further, I guess even all the way back to the Connery era of Goldfinger to then Thunderball, right? That's a drop off right there. And so I think for me, I first watched this movie, it's one of those movie theater experiences that are most burned in my mind, where I went and saw this movie with a coworker of mine back where I used to work, and me and her went to go see the movie, and we basically did it after work that day. And it was probably 8 o'clock showing of Spectre. And probably within the first 15 minutes, I looked over at her and she was asleep. And I kind of pushed her and woke her up. She's like, "Oh yeah, sorry." And basically throughout the rest of the movie, she would fall asleep 2 more times. And so it was just kind of a not great movie going experience. I got out of that and was I don't know if I didn't like that because I was sort of annoyed by who I watched it with, or if I was actually annoyed by the movie itself kind of thing. And so a month later, I watched it with my cousin, and it was very much that thing of being oh yeah, I just don't like this movie, I think. And we'll get into some of that down the line here, but before we do that,
it's fascinating because there were so many times in this movie I was this is just right up Logan's alley. This the opening sequence seems like something you would love. The train fight sequence seems like what and you allude to it in your 72nd that we'll get into. But there were just multiple times where I was all right, I don't know what the fuck Logan's talking about. This is a fine movie, and there are things in here that in other movies, Logan absolutely loves, but for whatever reason, this one doesn't do it for him.
Yeah. We'll get into all that. Yeah, the opening sequence, I will say, is a great opening sequence. There's no objections from, I think, most people from that. But running through the cast and crew before we get to that, we've, of course, got Daniel Craig back as James Bond for the 4th time, tying Pierce Brosnan's mark in the role. This, as you can probably guess, originally was viewed and envisioned as a ending point for Daniel Craig's tenure with the character. It's not hard to miss, I think, that at the film's conclusion. We've got Christoph Waltz as Blofeld, Franz Oberhauser, Leah Seydoux as Madeline Swann, Ben Whishaw is back as Q, Naomi Harris is back as Moneypenny. We've got Dave Bautista as Hinks. I've also seen it as Mr. Hinks.
Yeah, did not know he was in this, so I was oh, hey, it's Bautista.
And he's Spectre is such an interesting movie, and we'll get more into this at the end. But I even had this thought after, while I was watching it, and then, after I got done watching it, where it is sort of the opposite to me of, the sum like the parts are better than the whole kind of thing, or like the some of the parts make up a better whole kind of thing. And this is like, I like individual aspects of this, but then like taken as a whole, I don't care for a lot of it. I really like Dave Bautista here. He's such an obvious Bond villain, like henchman kind of guy.
If we had gotten a scene after he gets thrown off the train of him like coming out of a surgery or something because he had a dislocated jaw and now has metal teeth or something, and basically is this reboot's version of Jaws, I would have been like, I totally buy that, and that's a great setup.
That's
but
rad,
yeah, no,
his little like terrifying like nails that he like super. Oh yeah, great.
Yeah, when he pulls the moment from Game of Thrones, the mountain just crushes a guy.
It's funny too because he very much is in the same vein, and I can't remember if I put it in the show notes, if I did it in my like Spectre review that I've already like mostly written, where it's like he very clearly is following the lineage of like Odd Job and Jaws and like the like silent henchman kind of archetype. Even Red Grant for most of his story. He's very inspired by Red Grant, obviously. We've got Andrew Scott as C. Roy Kinnear is back as Tanner, and then Ralph Fiennes is back as M in his first kind of sole role in that. And this, of course, was directed by Sam Mendes, and a very interesting 1-2 punch from this and Skyfall. In the Blast from the Past section, the president for the second and last time was Barack Obama, and the prime minister for the second and last time was David Cameron, due to the 6-year gap we're about to go through between Bond movies. Trevor was 30 years old, and I was 23 years old.
It's also probably I'm realizing this is probably like a couple months after I originally launched TrevorTrove.com, just in that blast from the past. Like because I remember
2015,
November of that year is when I started my like writing every day, because it started as like NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, basically my take on that, for November of 2015. And then I just kept it going. So like, which obviously would be the precursor for That Nerdy Site. So
I had already been doing stuff online since Skyfall, because I basically started like almost to like the day, weirdly enough, with what was in Game with Greggy channel. So I'd already been going for 3 years, but this is pre me being IP by a year, or not even, like, I guess 6 months roughly. Where we at? Star Wars The Force Awakens would be the highest grossing movie for the year, shattering box office records en route to over $2 billion worldwide, becoming the third highest grossing movie of all time at the moment. It was a good year to be a Star Wars fan. Maybe arguably the last pure, just good time to be a Star Wars fan, in some ways, is 2015 with Force Awakens. Then after that, it just became a lot more complicated and messy and divisive. In the trivia section, this would be the first Daniel Craig film to feature the gun barrel sequence at the traditional start of the film. You can tell I was not expecting it at this point, that I was like, I found it so jarring. It just began with that. I was like, all right, we're not doing it in like the middle of the movie or at the end. It's just right where it usually is. Spectre was the most expensive Bond film ever made, with reports having the budget for the film ranging from $245 to $300 million, making it both the most expensive Bond film and one of the most expensive movies ever made. It would make that money back up, don't worry. The massive explosion at the film's end is the world record holder for the largest movie stunt explosion of all time. The explosion lasted for 7.5 seconds and would ultimately use the equivalent to 75 tons of TNT. And it is massive, if a little weird what exactly is causing it to blow up, but like, it's fine.
Definitely just like, when it happened, I was like, oh, I was not expecting that I thought he just threw some fire out or whatever. It's like, oh, apparently he just hit a gas line and just blew up the whole facility.
I had never really, or maybe I had, but just hadn't thought about it in like 6 years. But then watching it again now, I was like, okay, yeah, like that's an explosion. Then it kind of kept happening. I was like, what is causing this to go? Like he like fucking hit the like Death Star like nuclear reactor thing. This was the longest Bond movie ever at the time of its release at 2 hours and 28 minutes, breaking Casino Royale's record. It would hold that record for exactly one movie before subsequently losing the record to No Time to Die when it was released in 2021. Let's run through the 0070-second recap here, Trev. I didn't time myself when I wrote this one, but I feel like it's mostly fine. I'll probably say like 90 seconds. You know what I mean? We'll see how I feel.
Yeah, I'll go a minute 40.
Let's knock it out. James parties in Mexico City in a grand old pre-title sequence before grabbing a man's octopus ring. Afterwards, M is mad at Bond for the Mexico City bash. Bond meets C and learns the 00 program is in danger. James can't be bothered, though, and goes back to his empty apartment to watch an old video of old M with Moneypenny before heading off to Rome. Bond goes to a man he killed's funeral, sleeps with the man's wife, and then goes to a secretive meeting of Spectre where he sees Mr. Hinks and a familiar, if impossible, face. A car chase ensues, Bond ejects himself out, and then travels to Austria. He meets old pal Mr. White, who is slowly dying from poison. White reveals vague info about Spectre and tells Bond where he can meet his daughter, Madeline. White then kills himself. Bond goes to meet Madeline Swann, who is a doc at a clinic in the middle of nowhere. Swann is taken by Hinks. Bond smashes a plane into their car to save her before going to Tangiers, destroying a hotel room to find White's safe room, and discovering where Spectre's base is at. A nice train ride between Bond and Swann is interrupted by Hinks, who does his best Red Grant impression in a fight with Bond. Afterwards, Bond and Swann begin to show flickers of a romance. The two are picked up, taken to a nice building, and introduced to Franz Oberhauser, who Bond knew as a child, who has now become Blofeld. Some dumb shit happens. Bond watches saves the day, and a big explosion goes boom. We head back to London. M and C get in some fisticuffs before C just sort of falls. Bond and Blofeld meet. Bond saves Swann and then shoots down Blofeld's helicopter with a pistol from miles away in what has to be 1 in a trillion million billion shot. Bond doesn't kill Blofeld and instead drives off in the repaired DB5 with Madeline, walking away from the 00.
147.
147. I'm pretty happy with that. Trevor, how many were killed?
I want you to take a guess before I dive into how many were killed, because this one is a truly ludicrous number.
Like cumulative, you mean?
Yeah, everybody.
I'm gonna say the fact that you said that, I'm gonna go with 75.
Way lowballed. The final tally, 236. Of those 236, guess how many were Bond's kills?
10. I don't know if we know it.
232. Because they've gone through and analyzed all of the data people in Blofeld's lair. And so when his lair completely blows to shit, they basically like counted all of the people in those scenes and like, well, they're dead. And then they, cause I've seen like, they pull this from like a video kind of reference file, and they basically like then subtract out like 4 people from the vans or from the trucks that are escaping that are clearly like Blofeld and his guys at the end kind of thing. So yeah, like I saw that, I was like, what the hell? Like, where are all of those people coming from? So of that, of the 232, how many of those are named characters? And this, I'll even give you this little tease. This is another one that's definitely trying to fuck you.
Oh, great. I feel like there aren't that many named people because he obviously doesn't kill Blofeld, which, you know, is the big villain of the film. He kills Hinks, obviously, in a pretty great, brutal way. Outside of that, he doesn't kill White. White kills himself. And then people that are named, he doesn't kill C, obviously. But the fact that you said that's some bullshit. So I can only think of immediately one, plus the guy in the helicopter, who's definitely got a name like Scaria, I think something like that. Does the pilot have a name? That to me seems like bullshit. So I'm gonna say no, the pilot doesn't have a name. But there are plenty of people who do have names. So I'm just gonna guess at this point and say he kills 4 named characters.
That is a spot-on guess.
Hey!
Gaio, who is the first person he kills, that's the guy that is meeting with his target, who is Marco Sciarra, who he kills by throwing out the plane. And then the third one that's out there trying to fuck you is Lorenzo, who is the guy that like the bouncer at the secret meeting, who Bond introduces himself as Mickey Mouse to.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, he is named Lorenzo. Bond throws him off the balcony onto the table. He dies, and then Hanks is the fourth one. So
it's theoretically possible he could have survived that fall, but yeah, I'll allow it.
They count it as a kill. So yeah, that one.
Cool.
I felt like it was only fair to give you they're trying to fuck you on this one.
I definitely been like
because
one,
you
right?
definitely obviously
Maybe
you
two.
didn't get Gaio, you wouldn't have gotten Lorenzo.
No.
So just the sheer guessing.
I appreciate that
to get those extra two.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
lots. This is probably Bond's most body-driven spree, given all of the data scientists that he kills at Blofeld's lair with that explosion.
I'll be curious when we get to No Time to Die, because like that's all bullshit, whatever. Like, in terms of like people he actually sees that he kills, I'll be curious when we get to next week, because next week also has a very high like. Next week might be the highest like face to face like he's actually seen, because like the final assault in No Time to Die, he's just fucking in an action movie at that point, right? So like that could be the highest, not counting a massive explosion that wipes out 200 people apparently. So yeah, I'll be curious when we get to next week. Trevor, what did you think of Spectre?
Like I said, like I don't know if this is just because you set expectations so low, but I really like this one. Like I had a good time with it. I think, I like Christoph Waltz's Blofeld, certainly more than any of the other ones we've had. Maybe I'll give you maybe Telly Savalas, but like, I mean, this is just a better, I think, like better performer in the role. I think the biggest thing that hurt this movie is that they tried to pull the exact same shit as Star Trek Into Darkness, like literally a year or two after Star Trek Into Darkness. Of like, no, this is in my review. He's playing Franz Oberhauser. He's not playing Blofeld, and everybody's like, we know he's Blofeld. So I think that like is just the weakest element of the casting / misdirect, is that like it was one that everybody saw coming. Especially once like Spectre is officially like introduced in the mix. It's like
the name of the movie, right? It's like
you're not going to have a Spectre movie without Blofeld at the top of the organization, kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, like I really enjoy it. I think the opening sequence was like a cool little departure. That had a lot of like Live and Let Die vibes. Both in terms. In terms of the like the kind of the like the celebratory like funeral stuff, very that we get with like Day of the Dead, but then also like just the because that was also the one where you get like the the celebration and stuff around the sacrifice. So there's just a lot of like weird little like crossover vibes there, but I also just really enjoyed like how it was very much designed to be like a one-shot kind of thing, all the way from like the intro, and you see Sciarra kind of passing by in the intro in the in the Day of the Dead version of the classic white tux with the red flower, and then you see that's one of the targets that Bond is after, at the on the third floor, and then it just turns into an Uncharted action sequence, which I'm not going to be mad about on that either. So yeah, that was a lot of like, I had a good time with that. I think Hanks is a good, fun, bad villain. And he has like a great introduction. And doing the kind of like mean mug and silent kind of guy. Like I guess in between those, you have like a little bit like maybe the weakest element for me is probably the like Bond going and seducing the dead man's wife and pumping her for information. Wink wink. Like I thought that was a little too old school Bond for my taste, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. And at least even in the intro or in the build up to that, Bond, just takes out a couple guards, does what
Yeah,
he
that's
needs
a
to
great
do
moment. Yeah.
to get some alone time with her. Um, I'm trying to think what like I I like that like this has like it's easing back into the way of gadgets
Mm.
with like the prototype car that clearly also I like it being like it was supposed to be assigned to somebody else and Bond just takes it for his little
Yeah.
renegade mission. um I love like him and Q having that little conversation
Yeah.
about the smart blood and being like, well, fine, it is a a prototype, so it might not take effect for 48 hours.
Right.
Which like even that's weird because it's like this is the same tech that you effectively were using in Casino Royale. So
Yeah, it's just
how
blood.
is this
Right.
different than
Mm.
that version of Smart Blood just because you weren't around yet, Q? But it's whatever. I like the scene between Bond and Mr. White. Um,
Mm.
I again, it's very interesting watching this after watching No Time to Die
Right.
because I'm more predisposed to like Madeline. So like
Mm.
I enjoy her more in this than maybe I would have if I had seen this one first.
Right.
Um in part because there's an element of like I appreciate that she sticks around that like is the first Bond leading lady apart from like M who's really going to be a presence over multiple films.
Right.
um so I appreciated that. uh and I like on a broader scale I like the theme that's kind of at play that's the films kind of have touched on a couple times of like what is the role of the double O program in a world of infinite surveillance?
Mm.
And I'm not going to be mad when Andrew Scott shows up, who I really enjoyed when he was Moriarty in the Cumberbatch Sherlock stuff. I'm not going to be mad at him
Or
showing
the
up
hot
and
priest in Fleabag.
sure. Yeah,
Mm.
I've not watched Fleabag. Sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
he's
uh,
very
but
good in it.
but yeah, like he comes and I'm like, okay, I immediately know that I'm not supposed to trust this guy because of typecasting.
Mm-hmm.
So I can appreciate that. Um, and then there are like subtle, like surprisingly subtle bits of storytelling that happen throughout, like South Africa being the lone holdout, and then we see on like news footage that like shit is erupting in Cape Town. That's
Right.
clearly being like constructed to get South
South
Africa
Africa on
on
board.
board, but like they don't spell that out for you. You just get a scene later that like is, hey, the Nine Eyes vote has passed and South Africa came on board. It's not like we don't do a full detour into South Africa where Bond tries and fails to stop something. It's just that's happening in another part of this movie,
Mm-hmm.
separate from the adventure that Bond is investigating. I like it being like one last mission from Judi Dench.
Mm.
That was a nice little surprise. Yeah, I like I and then it like to the your incredulous like he shoots the plane down with a helicopter
Oh,
he shoots
dude.
the helicopter down with a bullet. Like he's done that in other movies. This is nothing more like ridiculous than half of the other shit he has done. Because as you always point out, let's not forget he went to space
He did.
30,
Powerful.
40 years ago. So him being able to, and it's like if it had been like the first shot, yeah, I would have been like bullshit. But the fact that like he has to basically unload a clip to actually hit the engine part that he's trying to go for, I'm like, okay, I give it a little bit more, leniency. Um,
Right.
so yeah, like I had a good time with this one.
I don't like Spectre. I will say that there are elements that I appreciate more on the third view, and I think that is pretty easy to happen as you watch movies more. There are just some things you can find to kind of pick up and be like, oh, that's a nice, I like this or I like that. I really do think it's a movie that, like I said, while watching this, I was kind of like, I enjoy that. I like that. I like that. And then like I got to the end of the movie and I'm just kind of like, I just don't like this though. Like I think as a whole, I don't like the package. I think the issue is Spectre is that it to me sort of it is sort of like the opposite of Skyfall, right? To take that as an example, right? Where like I think Skyfall builds and builds and builds really beautifully and really well, and like that last act at Skyfall is just like fantastic, and it leaves such a great final note for you. Whereas for me, the last act of Spectre is my least favorite part of the movie, probably, right? So like I think the last kind of taste I have in my mouth is just like, oh, I didn't like any of this stuff with Blofeld, and I think that's part of it. I don't like Christoph Waltz's Blofeld that much, which really pains me because I love Christoph Waltz. I think to be fair, it is a character that he's given very little to do with, and I think that's sort of what we get. I don't think I love the kind of archetypal like villain is revealed in the last like 5 minutes of a movie very much. There are moments and there are movies where it works, right? Like obviously something like Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins in that movie for what, like 10 minutes ultimately total. But it's kind of spaced out throughout the whole thing. And I think we just delay seeing him so long. And I'm so glad you also said the like Star Trek Into Darkness thing, because it is something I mentioned in my like written review in that post. But like, I find those things so annoying because it's a little bit like with Arkham Knight as well, right? Is another example where, you know, it's not Red Hood, it's a completely new character. And it's like, don't lie to us. If you had just said, this is going to be Red Hood, this is going to be Blofeld, this is going to be Khan, we as fans would have gotten really excited to see these new interpretations of them. And instead when we're like told they're not these characters, but they like obviously are, we're like, well, this is who it's going to be. And so then when the reveal does happen, it's like, yeah, I knew this already. Like, why would you keep this a secret for like 2 hours, right? Like, it's sort of this weird, like, all right, like, okay, cool. Like, that's whatever. Like, yeah. I don't ever like those sort of things. I'd rather just know and then go in and be excited when we do finally see them and be like, oh, it's going to be someone different. Nope, it's Blofeld. It's Khan. It's Red Hood.
Yeah, I remember the best takedown that I ever read was a friend of mine, like from high school, who posted something on Facebook of like, here's why the Khan reveal doesn't work in Star Trek Into Darkness, is that crew of the Enterprise has no context for Khan. They didn't encounter him in an original series episode, you know, years earlier or whatever, and you know, deal with how, you know, much of an antagonist he is. So him revealing that he's not really John Harrison, that he's actually Khan, is like, okay,
all right,
except for the audience. But the audience is like, but that like this clearly isn't, and also we already knew. So I will say that like what I did appreciate of this one versus Star Trek Into Darkness is it wasn't trying to make it a moment of like, haha, Bond, I'm Blofeld and you didn't know. Bond hasn't known the name Blofeld and doesn't react as though he's known the name Blofeld. It is in this movie, it is just portrayed still much more for the fans than for Bond, but it is just that person that you knew is dead. This is who you're talking to now. This is who I've been for the last 20 years. So know that even moving forward, know that going forward kind of thing.
Even down to the scar we give him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Blofeld in this movie, but I also think, you know, we touched on this a little bit last week. I also think Daniel Craig is a little bit unfortunate, a little bit like Roger Moore, in fact, where like I just think his kind of villain lineup as a whole is pretty okay, right? Like not particularly great. Like he's got Silva, who I think is really good. He's got Lashif, but even Lashif, we only get like half of that movie, right? And then I think Dominic Green is such a like blink and you miss it villain from Quantum. I don't like Blofeld here. We're gonna get more from the next movie. And then Rami Malek, I think, is like fine, right? And so I think it's just also like an underlying problem. Obviously, I think the pre-title sequence focusing on the positive, I think that's rad. I think it's a really great kind of classical pre-title Bond sequence, which is really, really great. I think the one take aspect of it is super cool. And obviously it's ultimately filmed in like 3 separate takes, but like it's just done and flows so fluidly. Really everything up until he like fires a shot in the building, starts collapsing, is like almost spot like perfect for me. I like the helicopter sequence a little bit less, if only because like I can see the like seams a bit more on that one. I think in terms of like like the CGI not being as good maybe, but it's also going on a 7-year-old movie, so that stuff can age at times not as well. But
Yeah, my only real issue with the helicopter sequence was it felt like it went a little long, especially for
right,
what we
yeah,
knew. Like we obviously knew what was going to happen, and then there's also this element of like, what was Bond's plan as he's trying to take out the helicopter pilot? Like
I had that same thought.
that's not that there's like more chances than not that doesn't go well for you, Bond.
Catastrophically wrong. Yeah, it's like
For both you and all of the people below you.
Yeah. So I did think, yeah, I agree about that. But like on the whole, I liked it. The like I think Andrew Scott is just kind of like a little bit like Christoph Waltz. Like as an actor I really like, who just is sort of given like sort of a thankless role. Like I think sees sort of like fine in this movie.
I mean, yeah, he's there to be the bureaucratic like baddie for Ray Fiennes' character and like the home base crew to deal with while Bond is out gallivanting around the world.
Right. I mean, it's so interesting to hear your perspective because it probably is true, but like I think I like Madeline Swann as a character. But I think so much of that comes from No Time to Die, right? And as someone who obviously saw her first here, I think she's fine, right? Like, I think my big issue with that character, with a lot of this movie, honestly, is that, like, for a movie that was the longest Bond movie ever, I almost wanted, like, 30 more minutes of this thing, right? To just, like, actually fully flesh out a lot of the threads it's doing, right? Like, I think it's trying so many different things, and it's not giving us enough time for it. Like, we don't meet Madeline until, like, over an hour into this movie. And that can work, right? Like we didn't meet Vesper until really deep into Casino Royale, but then it was very much focused on them and giving us a lot of moments of that relationship. And here it felt like, you know, they meet, they don't like each other. They go to Tangiers. She passes out drunk. Bond smashes open that room. And then it's like, all right, cool. Now we're on a train. And there's like a nice moment here. Hinks tries to kill them. They like sleep together and it's like, all right, cool. Like this can kind of start to be something, but then it's just sort of like the next movie season basically is at Blofeld's camp. She immediately is like, I love you. And it's like, I feel like we didn't get to a point where like that felt earned, right? Like I look at a character.
I mean, like
I liked.
I was just gonna say, I think they very much like fall in the throes of passion after the near-death experience of Hinks on the train, but also like even before Hinks shows up, they have like a nice heart-to-heart conversation where she like doles out like her backstory that we will ultimately end up seeing in No Time to Die, which that was another thing of like, oh, that's cool that like No Time to Die is directly paying off that sequence that she talks about of you know, somebody came to kill my dad when I was young, but they didn't know that my dad hid a gun under the sink. And we see that exact sequence play out with the next baddie. So like I appreciate that, like, and again, like part of that is the weirdness of me having seen that sequence play out first and then seeing her reference it here. But I think like they have certainly like, I mean, certainly more of a connection than half of the women Bond has been with over the 25 other films before, you know, leading up to any of that stuff. And I think like after they, you know, fight off Hinks, the fun little beat of like, so what do we do now, into them, you know, making out and enjoying the rest of their train ride together. But also I did appreciate the antagonism between the two in Tangiers. I did make a note of she passes out, and then like when she wakes up to, you know, follow Bond after he has drunkenly interrogated a mouse, she's in a nightie. So at some point she like woke up from her drunken stupor, changed into a nightie, and then the movie was continuing. It's like, that's a weird little continuity thing. But
I also caught that.
Yeah, like I enjoy their relationship. I think it's paced out. Yeah, it's still paced out too quickly for any kind of like realistic scenario, but for, the high-paced action of a Bond movie, it's pretty on par.
I think my issue is that like I think I look at like a Bond relationship we both really like, which was like Bond and Carr, right, and Live in Daylight. Like that felt
That's
like a much more like natural slow burn than this one did, right?
I mean, that's actually the relationship I was just thinking about, is like that's the one I would draw this comparison to as well, and I think that one is probably has like a few more days that
Yeah,
are
we get
happening
more
over the course
time.
of
We
stuff.
get more on-screen time of them together, I think, so that when it does happen, it's like, all right, yeah, this feels much more natural, right? I guess that's my thing. Like, I don't dislike their bond. I wish we just had more of them bonding before we get to like the "I love you," right? I guess is really my issue. Madeline Swann as a character is fine. She's not the issue that some people think she is. And she's markedly better in No Time to Die, where they give, I think, those characters lots of moments where they just kind of like be together. Yeah, like I think there's so much elements of that, right? Like I did like the, when he was with like Monica Bellucci's character, like the allusion to like I have an American friend who can help you out, like the kind of nod to Felix there. And like that is nice. I think the Tangier scene is nice. I don't like the Mr. White scene, I think, as much as you. I enjoy it, but I think Spectre is probably the Bond movie that is most hurt by its marketing for me and its trailers for me, right? Like this to me is an example of the Bond series equivalent of Man of Steel, maybe, is actually like a pretty apt comparison, right? Where like Man of Steel, I think, still might have like the single best trailer I've ever seen of a movie. Like that, those like Man of Steel trailers were so good, and then the movie itself just kind of wasn't that, right? And a little bit in the similar vein, like the Spectre trailers, I still think are like really great. They're really, really good trailers, and then the movie itself like isn't sort of what I like thought it was going to be or wanted it to be, maybe more kind of accurately. And like the Mr. White scene, like the way it had shown up in the trailer versus what we get in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, like this is still good, just not the way I thought it was going to be, and it's hard to like decompact that from what your kind of expectations going into it were, right? Like this is the Bond movie that I think was most affected by that. But like I obviously like Jesper Christensen pretty much in anything. He's been good throughout the series, but he does tie into like an element of the Spectre that is a huge issue for me, which is this is the movie that is the most, I think, problematic in terms of like the MCUification of films. Like the movies need to like incessantly tie in everything the Daniel Craig era together constantly. I just found it to be constantly getting its own way, right? Like, and in particular, like one in particular for me was like, there's no reason, and it doesn't make any sense to include Silva in the stuff, right? Like, obviously Casino Royale and Quantum flows really easily into this, right? And like that would have worked, right? And we kind of had the series itself had a parallel for this moment, right? Of like having Dr. No and From Russia with Love then feed into Thunderball and You Only Live Twice and On Magic Service and Diamond Something like that. And like Goldfinger just be a thing that, yeah, that was just an adventure Bond had in the midst of all this other stuff, right? And that Spectre, I mean, Skyfall so clearly fits in that same bucket, and Raoul Silver so clearly is not a man who is taking orders from anyone and is just like doing his own thing on this revenge mission that like anytime it shows his face, it's like, this is such a random, bizarre thing. You just like had to find a way to tie this back together. You had to find a way to tie Mr. White back into the story. Like I just found it more like in my face. Like I don't need this. Than that I was wondering about that. Or what about this mission that he had? It's like, yeah, he's a spy. He has lots of other missions that aren't necessarily all connected to the same organization. And I think that is sort of where the movie, in the last act in particular, started to get weighed down by this like need to tie everything back together. There was also like the weird scene I always think of when it's Bond, Blofeld, and Madeline all like together, where they just like show the entire scene over again of Bond and Mr. White together. And like I know it's for like Madeline to see, but like I think a better film decision for me to just been like to show like a clip of that, and they show like the entire dialogue scene again. Well, they need like through them watching it now, and I was like, I don't know if I need to see this whole scene a second time.
I mean, they need to show Madeline that like Mr. White did it with Bond's gun, that Bond gave him the gun that that allowed him to end his life. So like
I think
you needed that element,
right? Yeah.
To the MCUification of it. It was like I remember that being a complaint, so I kind of like knew to expect it going in. And your description of it even now is not how I perceive it in the film. Like it's in your face all the time. It was like two little sequences, and most of it is just like a couple of quick snippets of like, here are all of those other characters as the tentacles of the octopus kind of thing folding up. And like
Spectre, yeah.
And Blofeld, makes mention of it in one of his speeches, and you get, I guess, the faces in the old MI6 headquarters. Yeah. But like that's 3 very brief bits of the overall film that like I view it as more as like, okay, yeah, he's been the one pulling the strings behind this. Yeah, Silva was clearly on his own mission, but maybe Blofeld kind of like helped steer him in the right direction, or helped provide some resources or bankroll or whatever. Like it did not bother me nearly as much as I was expecting it to, based on how you and others have talked about it in this film. I thought it was like, it's there. It did not like way over the proceedings for me in any kind of significant way. It was just kind of like okay, like that's a neat idea that they're trying to tie this all together. I don't like in some of the, I guess in the same way that you often talk about like Star Wars, like, buy into that if you want to buy into it, or don't if you don't want to buy into it. Like it was whatever for me, and I was just kind of like, okay, that's fine. Like it doesn't suddenly make me like Skyfall less to think that like really Blofeld is out there kind of like pulling the strings over Silver or whatever, because like I think Skyfall is just still a very standout movie that even if, there's like this unseen hand kind of helping him learn the things that he wouldn't have otherwise known, like fine, whatever. And like if they had spent like a lot of time going into, here's how I was manipulating Quantum, and here's how I was manipulating Silva to do all these things just to ruin your life, Bond, then I would have been like, okay, that's a lot. But like it's all just kind of very like obliquely and passively, like that still was his objective because of this like, rivalry he had as a kid apparently.
We're gonna get to that, don't worry.
But like it was still like I appreciated that he in the retconning of some of those things, it made a more compelling and more interesting and a more personal villain for Bond. Of he's doing this, he's just taking everything away from Bond's world, and that's what we've seen. We've seen Bond, we've seen Vesper be taken from him, we've seen M be taken from him. Like Bond has nothing going into this movie effectively because of all of the things that have been happening behind the scenes. So like it didn't bother me like nearly as much as I was expecting it to, based on how people have like discussed that element of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've already kind of went to like the big point for me, which is like my other favorite aspect of the movie is Blofeld, I think in general, right? And his like, I am the author of your pain stuff, and obviously the thing that like every time I roll my eyes at heart, it's just like the fact that they're like brothers and this kind of retelling of the story I hate, right? Like that is an element that I just do not like, because I think it makes Blofeld's motivations really stupid, right? Like that. I guess that's harsh
compared to old Blofeld. It was like, I want to change my appearance for the lineage so I can be a duke or whatever.
A count, but the larger
Blofeld,
ambition for...
I hate to break it to you, Logan, Blofeld has always been a terrible character.
No, but I guess the difference for me is that like there it's just like, yeah, like I want to, like I'm just a bad guy doing bad shit, right? Like that's my general plan. Like I'm just a bad guy, right? Like I think what watching this movie again kind of made me realize, and someone had a Twitter thread about this recently, so I can't give them credit, unfortunately, but I can't remember who it was, but about like movie villains in general, is that like I think we're at like this like point in time where like sometimes people can just be bad and like that can be enough. Like I don't need this like deeply personal, emotional backstory for every villain, because like sometimes it's not as engaging, right? Like for Silva, I think it really works, right? And I think for Blofeld, for me, it doesn't, right? And I think Rami Malek is sort of like in the middle for me of like, yeah, like this works not as good as this, but better than this kind of thing. In Blofeld's case, it just doesn't work for me. And I think they're like the same with like Joker too. Like I don't need a Joker movie to tell me why Joker's bad. That makes him less interesting and the movie's terrible, right? Like just he can just be a crazy person. That's what makes him engaging. And I think part of what makes Blofeld fun is that like, yeah, he's just a dude who just wants to be evil. And like, that's enough of a compelling motivation for me to like go about it. Right. Cause when you try to give him a backstory like this, it's like, all right, but like, that's sort of, he's like a 14-year-old boy and his dad brings in this like English kid for like 2 winters and he gets jealous and murders his dad, fakes his own death, and then builds a criminal organization in the next 30 years. And it's like, that's a weird amount of leaps there. Then like, I wish I just had known none of that. And he just came out and was like, I'm a bad guy. I do bad shit. This is my whole thing. I want to take over the world and like do criminal conspiracy shits. Right. And like, I think having it be like Franz Oberhauser turned Blofeld just never works for me. And I know this is an element that like a lot of Bond fans talk about. So like, it's obviously a very like Bondian aspect, but like I think Skyfall dealt with like the Bond lore and kind of mythology and history and like really smart and clever ways that like I think were really well done by Sam Mendes and Daniel Craig and kind of the whole team behind that. And I think this to me is much more just like, hey, like let's make them have like a personal feud from when they were kids. And does that really make sense? No, like, but we're gonna just do it anyway. And it's like I just don't like it as much. And yeah, like if you're someone who doesn't know or isn't a huge Bond fan or whatever, I don't know how much that bothers you or doesn't bother you. I can't speak to that, obviously, as someone who just is a Bond fan. But for me, I don't like it and it doesn't work. And that's so much of that last act is built around like, my fingers are in all the pies. I'm the author of all your pain. I did all this shit. I had Silva kill him. Like I was aware of that. I Vesper shit. Like you're all alone. Look at the woman, what happened in their life kind of thing. And it's just like, none of this is great for me. I don't like the final meeting of Bond and Blofeld behind like the glass. That doesn't work. The only reason the final moment of them together on the bridge works is because of the stuff with Madeline and him like renouncing. Like it's a theme that they've been really keen on throughout the entire Daniel Craig era, which I really like, which is like from Casino Royale onwards, and every movie of Daniel Craig's they've mentioned to be a 00 doesn't just mean you know when to kill, it means when to not kill someone, right? Like they've been really intent about that for 4 movies, so it had a good build up to this moment, and him walking away not because he's like I give up on revenge, but because he found something to live for and to love, right? In Madeline, that moment I like. It has nothing to do with Blofeld, who's just sort of like is there and is like do it, like he's Emperor Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith. But like that whole last act I think just kind of collapses slowly for me. I like the last images of the movie, right? Like with Bond, like with Q walking into his lab, the car not being there, Bond and Madeline driving off in the DB5. It is the second ending of the Daniel Craig era that we get after Skyfall is very obvious. This could be the end of his run. And is yet another one I like.
Well, this one, so, the ending is it's the car is gone earlier when Q walks into the lab. This time, like Bond walks in and Q's like, I thought you left. And he's like, I need one more thing. And it's him getting the car back.
The DB5.
Him getting the DB5. I will right. to the like sometimes a villain just needs to be evil. I'm not opposed to that, but I will say like looking at our villains list, most often when a villain is just bad, we don't care. we're not invested in that villain, and so they end up kind of making up a lot of the bottom of our list. The one like just in general, characters are more compelling if you find some kind of way to connect with them, or like in the vein of like a Killmonger or Thanos from the MCU, like seeing like disagreeing with what they're doing, but understanding why they came to the conclusion that they've come to, is far more interesting than not. And so like having this like thing born out of a child's jealousy for Blofeld's like, okay, Yeah, maybe not the most compelling, and again, but I don't think Blofeld has ever been the most compelling of villains.
Right, in your
He
experience, yeah.
is, from his very first appearance, he is nothing more than a stark scar on a face, and
Mm.
10 minutes of evil menace built up over three prior
40
movies of
years,
him
right,
just
yeah.
in the shadows,
Shadows.
played by multiple different like actors and whatnot, as though he was pulling the strings. So I wonder, in that vein, if if there had been inserted in every one of in Casino Royale, Quantum of
Right.
Solace, and Skyfall, if there
Skyfall.
had been like a scene of just somebody petting a cat built like in the long term build up to this reveal, if you would feel the same way, or not. But it's a it's a obviously it's a
It's an
a
impossible choice, but I mean, I
impossible
think there would have
hypothetical
been
kind of,
more
yeah.
build up for that, right? Like, and I still, my statement on Skyfall is still the same. Like, I don't want him in that movie at all. But like, in terms of Casino around Quantum, that's totally possible, right? Like, I think part of what makes his reveal and his 10 minutes, like you said, in You Only Live Twice, so much fun, I think, is the fact that like you have been kind of like trying to see who is this dude for the prior few movies, kind of thing. So like it does have like a pop when it happens. If it's here, it's like, well, I don't know who you are. Bond clearly does. Like it's like the opposite moment for Con, where it's like Bond understands who this person is, but none of us
I,
technically do, right? So it's like, all right, like I don't know who
I
Franz Oberhauser is, kind of thing, right? So
I
like that
mean,
doesn't mean anything to me.
even there, I don't think. I mean, like in the Connery era, Bond didn't know that there was like a big bad at the top of Spectre. He's dealt with some of the minions and stuff, but I don't think he like had a true grasp of like the organizational like infrastructure. He's just he encounters this guy who's got a cat and tries to kill him and gets away, and Bond basically tries to not let that be like a finish. But yeah, it like I don't know that we're ever going to see eye to eye on Blofeld, because I think
Maybe, but
I, like
I think
the Austin Powersification of the character certainly
right.
like has ruined any chance of him ever being like intimidating. So at least here he's introduced, and if the like well, this is obviously the first appearance of Blofeld, he is
In
introduced
this
as a
canon, yeah.
threat who is interested in psychologically tormenting our hero for
Mm.
personal reasons, ludicrous and like outlandish and
As they
silly
may be,
personal
right?
reasons, but he's also doing it in like gruesome and horrifying ways of like drilling into the sides of his head and
Right.
stuff, and trying to like play with certain nerve endings or whatever. It's like, that's terrifying, and I would not want anybody doing that to me. And
I
then
do find it
obviously we'll talk about it more next week, but like the fact that even that doesn't just like stay confined to one movie, and he
yeah,
still has a like a his still like ultimate goal is going to be to completely ruin James Bond.
yeah.
It like I appreciate that aspect of the character versus like a Dominic Green, who it's like,
Dominic
yeah,
Green's totally
you
different.
wanted nothing really.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, um, yeah, No Time to Die is interesting too. But like I think for me it's an element of I think Blofeld just doesn't work, and they build this movie so much around him in the last part of the film. For me, at least, right? I mean, each of our kind of perspectives. Um, I did want to say that I really like Ben Whishaw here. I mean, I love Ben Whishaw in general, right? More people should go watch The Hour. He's fantastic in it. But I think I like his and Daniel Craig's relationship a lot as Bond and Q. We get 3 movies worth of it, kind of thing, and I don't think Ben Whishaw will continue on as Q. I don't think any of this cast will. That'll be something we'll talk about in the next couple weeks here, but I really liked him as Q. I really like him as Q. Same with Moneypenny. She gets a little bit less to do in this movie, I think, than Skyfall, but it's still, she's not here, she's great. Like I like the MI6 team a lot, and it's kind of fun to see their adventures. But I just
I
think
love Q showing up at the ski
the
resort
clinic,
clinic
right?
thing, and Bond trying to order his drink, and he can't because they don't serve alcohol there.
Just throw
Um,
it directly in the toilet. It'll be quicker this way.
yeah, yes, cut out the middleman. But then yeah, I liked Q, having his own little adventure on his way down the mountain compared to Bond's adventure, where he finds a plane from out of nowhere and uses that plane to take out three
smash
Jeeps
into
somehow.
the car, right?
But whatever. Again, like the series has always been like completely nonsensical. So you're either along for the ride or you're not, and
Right.
yeah, there may be like inconsistencies of like when you're along for the ride or when you're not. This had enough action and fun and silliness that I was like, I'm here for it. Versus like the skiing down with like the parachuting snowmobiles or whatever from Tomorrow Never Dies. The World Is Not Enough yet. There you go.
Yeah.
Like that one was silly. But even this, like I appreciate that even amidst the backstory of the Oberhausens, that like, oh, that's also where Bond learned to shoot and ski and like picked up some of those skills that would go on to and have gone on to help him in his his time as a spy. And also like I mean, even going, just staying on that like that the clinic sequence, I guess, like I appreciate the introduction between Bond and Madeline in that sequence. Like Bond going in there with the objective, obviously, but he plays the game to get the appointment to, take the psyche eval kind of thing with her, to in part open up to like what he's about and let her kind of do her thing and feel like she's in control of the situation. So I appreciated that like introduction, but then like when she realizes she's been lied to, that clearly shuts things down. So like, I liked all that. And I like that the movie also takes the appropriate steps to like, it's not that Hinks shows up out of nowhere. It's Hinks showed up at Mr. White's house, found the footage that Blofeld will also eventually show from this very conveniently placed security camera within his own house, because Mr. White was just a paranoid freak. So I appreciate that, like, that the movie does the, like, compared to like Quantum of Solace, where it was like, how did Camille know to show up at this place? Some of those like things are such leaps in logic that this one I appreciate, like, did the legwork to explain, here's how you get here. I liked that MI6 still very much blown up from the last movie and is scheduled for demolition here, and then that comes back into play in the final act. Like I appreciated that element, even if it sounds like you did not.
Right. Trev, any final thoughts before we wrap into the wrap up here?
I did. Speaking of that, like the security camera at Mr. White's house, I did make a note there. 4 movies in, and Craig's Bond still doesn't have a good eye for when cameras are recording him.
Right. Yeah. Casino Royale now. I think.
Also, shout out to Mr. White having a VHS copy of the interrogation with Vesper. I was like, why were you doing that on VHS, my dude? Yeah. Right. That easily should have been a DVD.
Right. Yeah, very good. Well, all right. Yeah, let's run through the wrap up here.
Also, shout out to the Blofeld's cat.
Also,
little having a cameo. Yeah.
I will say, this is what I was trying to think of earlier, that you'd mentioned. Whenever he was being like drilled in his head, like I remember when I first saw that in theaters, like obviously not knowing how the movie played out, a little bit like in Uncharted 4, where like it like had a moment where like it just like went to white. This movie has like some thing where like it just sort of like fades to white for a second, and I was like, there's gonna be some dumb internet like fanboy who's like, Bond is technically dead for that moment. Everything after this is all a dream kind of thing. And I was like, I remember like watching the theater, like getting angry, being like, these goddamn idiots are going to say some dumb shit like that. Yeah. And like, I've never seen that, just like I've never seen it for Uncharted 4, but I can remember thinking that being I don't want to see it.
I saw it in the No Time to Die trivia that like there it I don't think it ever made it past like an early, outline of the movie or something, but like they talk about the idea that of going back and retconning and being like, everything that happened at the end of that movie up through like the opening of No Time to Die would be, in Bond's head, and he was still there strapped to a chair in Blofeld's, power. I think the director like looked at like that being a possibility. Obviously they don't go that route, but
No.
it does tie into that. Also, I want to shout out the poor production design choice that did not take advantage of including Tiago Rodriguez's name on the list of the dead when Bond is in the old MI6 quarters. Because M had specifically mentioned that like your name is on the building you just blew up, on the wall of the building you blew up. So because obviously she did not have an opportunity to strike it off following that sequence. So I think it would have been like a fun, and I did like freeze frame to see if I could find it there, and it is not there. So I was like, that's a missed opportunity. They could have just had it, had that be in the background. no names of any kind of ethnicity apart from seemingly very European white kind of names on that wall. But yeah. Obviously Man with the Golden Gun, not very high on your list of things, but I appreciated almost the like funhouse nature of what Blofeld had set up there in the MI6 stuff, with like Bond's face and all of the firing ranges and stuff like that. So many M names in here, because you got Mallory, you got Madeline. The next one's gonna add another one in the fold. I think that's everything I had. What do I have here? Very, very obvious trap was a very obvious trap. I don't remember what that was from, what that's in reference to. The other quote I pulled in here as an almost for like my intro would have been "It's not over yet," which also would have been a very apropos one. Yeah. Oh yeah. The very obvious trap being a very obvious trap was the like Dark Knight-ification of the road of like, all right, you got to take this detour now, and then the car gets rammed. That's what it was when Bond gets taken and M escapes. That was what that was in reference to. And I did have, I guess this applies multiple times. I took the note specifically when they're blowing the evil lair out in the desert. But good thing James's marksmanship is back in full force after Skyfall, because he's like taking people out from like 150 feet away with his assault rifle at first. The guy coming down from the helicopter. It takes that guy out in like one shot. So hey, they at least go through the motions of establishing that his eyesight is back on track after Skyfall.
But yeah. All right, let's run through the wrap up here then. Trevor, this will be a fun, divisive one. Let's start with the first one. Where do you want to rank Christoph Waltz's version of Blofeld for Villain's Corner here? I
mean, like personally, and I know I'm going to get pushback on this, but I would put him at least above Blofeld 2.0, who is the highest Blofeld on our list. I think he's, it does have like the flawed factor of not just owning that it was Blofeld up front and trying to do the like bait and switch that's only for the dumbest of audiences. I still thought the performance and I very much like the personal motivation behind the character, as opposed to prior Blofeld, who was just evil for evil's sake.
It's interesting because obviously what makes the Villain's Corner list fun in particular is the fact that like it's a combined shared list, obviously, so this list isn't necessarily what my or your list would look like. I obviously like him less, but part of the problem is that like once you get to a certain point, you get to a lot of villains who I don't dislike, right? Like, but it's in sort of a weird order, right? Like I probably like Christoph Waltz's Blofeld as much as Hugo Drax, right? But I like him less than Largo or Renard or Rosa Klebb or Dr. No or Kamal Khan even, right? Like I'd like the next guy would be like Dominic Green. So like I guess I would say the Hugo Drax spot on this list would be where I put him, because certainly I look at some of the names
which
that are
is
below.
which is below Blofeld 1 and Blofeld 3. So you would put this as the weakest Blofeld, which is just like nonsensical to me. And that's where I say, like, when I watched this, I was like, either Logan is going to have like a come to Jesus of like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was, or Logan's going to like dig in his heels, and this movie represents all the things he doesn't like because of his love and reverence for like the Connery era stuff. And it sounds like we've gone that latter route.
It's interesting too, because but I also think like, because like I look at like Jaws and Oddjob, right, and like I think this is a character that like would rank below those two for me, just in terms of like iconography alone, right? And I think Toast of Wallace's Blofeld obviously is also like an iconic one. Right, so then like the next person below Oddjob is like Colonel Moon and Graves, and like I don't like Graves, but I like Colonel Moon, right? So like then there's like a spot right there, the competition we could have there. Brad Whitaker, we each liked, I think, decently in Living Daylights. Like certainly, like I don't necessarily think this is the worst Blofeld, right? Like I think, you know, as much as I think we each really enjoy Charles Gray's Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever, I don't know if either one of us are going to say it's a like stellar acting performance. I think it's a fun like camp performance, but I do like Blofeld 1.0's performance, right? It's like it would be somewhere between like Graves, Whitaker, Blofeld 1, 3, Drax for me is probably where I'd put him.
Yeah, and I have him because I like
at 2.
I have him above. Like I said, I have him above Blofeld 2.0. Maybe I would like bend and be like, all right, yeah, we can give the edge to Telly Savalas. But yeah, like I think.
Well, I would say we'd split the difference then, which is basically like below Oddjob, but above Moon and Graves, right? It's like sort of like the middle spot between those two.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Right. Blofeld 4.0.
Technically 5.0 because we did, and don't try and pull the bullshit of like that wasn't really Blofeld when they dump him off of a helicopter into a smokestack.
There we go. That puts
for those that can't see the doc and are just like, why was there awkward silence there? It's Logan was writing Blofeld 4.0 or 5 if you count for your eyes only,
which actually puts him like pretty close to like smack dab in the middle of the list.
Yeah.
In terms of those musical moments,
are we gonna do Mr. Hinks as well?
Ooh, yeah, let's do that. That's a great shout out, Trevor. That's a great thing to pick up. I think it's probably each of our favorite parts of the movies is Mr. Hinks from Dave Bautista. I think Dave Bautista's fantastic here, right? Like in terms of the like henchman of the series, the highest one we have is Onatop, and then Dario, and Red Grant is third. I mean, I'll open the floor to you, but I think we each really like Mr. Hinks here.
Yeah, I mean, like this is one of the big ones I wrote where I was like, the train fight sequence is, in my opinion, a significant step up from the Red Grant train fight. I like obviously the Red Grant train fight from a very different time in filmmaking, and like it is a much more like closed quarters kind of like just brawl of a fight. Whereas this is much more like your action movie. Let's fight up and down the train through a whole bunch of different cars. Kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it. And I saw that very much as like an evolution of, and like, it's not even trying to hide that, like,
it's a direct homage.
That is the homage that it's making there. So I very much appreciated that. I like, and while I personally very much liked the character and the Bautista nature of it, I don't think he will like, he's not going to stand the test of time in the way that like Jaws and Oddjob have.
Or
so
on top even, right?
Yeah. So I would like, just in terms of them, I would probably put him below them as well. As much as I like him, and as much as I like it is weird because I like him more than Red Grant, but I don't think he will be nearly as iconic.
Right. Partially as the movie.
Yeah.
I really like Mr. Hinks. Again, I think he's one of the parts of me that worked the best for me. I'm not a I don't object to your spot of putting him below Oddjobs and Jaws because of just the sheer iconography of those two characters. But like,
yeah,
I really like. I can't stress this enough. Like in a movie where I have a lot of issues with the film, I really, really like Dave Bautista in this movie. I think he's such a great Bond, like big baddie kind of character. And I'm glad that you also shouted out the fight because I think the fight is a really fascinating evolution of this. And I kind of talked about it a little bit in my review where I find the fight interesting between him and Bond on the train precisely because it is sort of like the polar opposite of what the Red Grant one is, right? Like as you alluded to, the Red Grant fight is like super intimate and close quarters and like this like brawl. And I love it for all of those reasons, right? Like it's very intimate and very confined and cramped. And it's great for that reason. And this one, it takes the opposite tack of like, we're just going to destroy this entire fucking train. Like we're just going to smash through walls and do this shit and like go crazy things all over the top, right? Like Madeline coming in, the fact that Bond gets the shit beat out of him by the end, like it's a great visceral fight that is like a really cool like homage and like continuation of what the Red Grant one is, which is one of the most iconic Bond fights, but updated in a way that makes it still feel really distinct, I think, and different on its own. And so I think that fight is like a really great example of how to do a like homage, like a modern classic Bond thing and like update it for a more modern sensibility.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like I see a, like, I can connect dots to a line going from the Red Grant one to the one with, I'm going to call him Clamps because I forgot what his name was, but Live and Let Die, to the Jaws fight where I don't remember who the female protagonist in that one was, but like she gets involved in the fight and helps. To this one where Madeline basically saves Bond at the last moment using a gun that she's already very much been established, like she does not like guns, but she's very comfortable, like we get that scene on the train earlier, like introducing, she knows how to handle herself, she just doesn't want to, and she has an aversion to it. But it comes back into play here where like she comes in where Bond is about to be thrown from the train. She gets a shot off, takes Batista out just long enough to like reorient to the fight, and then they're able to knock him off the train together as kind of like a duo unit. And so I think that is a like I love like I love it's shot in such a fun way too, with like, you know, one keg starts going and you see that they're all kind of tied together and Bond basically uses that to his advantage. And then we get the one line from Hanks of shit. Like that fun little like Wile E. Coyote moment of realizing that he's about to fall off the cliff. So yeah, I have enjoyed over the course of the series that evolution as action scenes have kind of grown and evolved. And also the thematic element of, you go all the way back to that first Red Grant one, and what's her butt has been like literally just put into the like the bed of the car and is basically trapped and can't do anything, and all the way to this one where like it is Bond Madeline's is getting the critical assistance from Madeline in a key moment. So yeah, I really like, I thought that was a great sequence.
I agree. So Mr. Hanks makes the list.
right above Blofeld.
Right below Blofeld, which feels right. And right below Jaws and Oddjob, that's not bad company to be near. In terms of those musical
especially moments, like Hanks is as you touched on, like so clearly in the spirit of your Jaws and your Oddjob, that again, like if they had shown us one more shot of he survived falling off that train but maybe fucked up his mouth and now needs some metal jaws, and like if that had been like a post credits tease or something like that, I would have been Stinger, like, yep, perfect.
That's fun. In terms of the theme from Sam Smith, Trevor, what did you think of Sam Smith's rendition here?
So forgettable. I'll say forgettable, like talking about it now a couple days after I've watched it. In the moment, I remember thinking like, this is just weird. Like Sam Smith's like very falsetto-esque kind of like high like he sings like he's a super tenor kind of voice, does not have like the richness and the soul that so many of like the best Bond themes have, be it Adele's Skyfall or the Shirley Bassey ones. So it just seems like such a weird. I was not particularly here for it.
It's interesting. Yeah, people. I think it's not a very good Bond theme because I think it's him trying to do Adele too much from Skyfall, and like I just don't know if he's that kind of an artist, right? It's interesting. Like the parts of the theme I enjoy the most are like in the actual movie itself, and they're like threaded in as like background music to moments, and there isn't like this like a bombastic attempt to like be super powerful and loud in it. And I think those moments work better. Like the music is better than the vocals. Obviously, the vocals are such a big part of the theme, though. I think it's pretty whatever, right? Like I'd probably put it below Diamonds, above For Your Eyes Only, which I think is truly forgettable. But Diamonds at least is a Shirley Bassey one that, you know, has that going for it. That's sort of where I'd put it.
Sure. I care so little about this one. This one, I'm looking through my notes. I'm like, I didn't even take a note on the song. Usually, I'll have a specific line in my notes of like, here are my thoughts on this. I just don't have anything. I go straight from helicopter fight ran a bit long, but still a pretty cool opening, to Bond and MC and Bond gets grounded. Those are my back-to-back notes. So okay.
Next, we've got the Q-Lab sequence. You get a few more gadgets, as you mentioned. Kind of, we got the watch, the classic Bond watch, coming in super, super, super handy here, so Bond doesn't get a lobotomy. We've got the new awesome 009 packed car. I really loved the moment. We haven't talked about it yet, so I'm glad I get to bring it up. Of Bond not knowing what the different like buttons do, and like one of them is just like 009's like radio station essentially, and it's
atmosphere.
Such a great, such a great bit. The fact that Bond gets to like use an ejector seat on himself and like parachute down, and Craig does a great moment of like him just like hitting the button and it dropping off is great, right? Like I think that is such a cool way to like do a Bond car in a modern way. You get the DB5 again. I think there's a lot of fun to be had in kind of the increase in gadgetiness of James Bond again.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun in that car sequence, and again, like it's like that was we're also getting like a bit of Hinks in that sequence as well, as his car gets suddenly torched,
so on fire,
but yeah, there's a lot of fun elements because he did steal this from another agent that it was like prepared for kind of thing, and didn't get like the rundown of here's everything this is going to do for you. And yeah, because one of them was like ammunition not loaded. I love that moment. Like the one where he tries to shoot. I was like, perfect, beautiful, no notes. Yeah, my note here, ha ha ha, ammunition not loaded, atmosphere equals jazzy music. Yeah. I also love that like while that sequence is happening, Bond is on the phone with Moneypenny getting exposition and kind of moving the plot along and figuring out what he needs to do next in the middle of this high-speed chase. Plus you get like a fun little moment where, he shoves a Fiat driver who's driving very, very slowly through the streets of whatever Italian city they were in.
Rome, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I love gadgets. I think they got such a like oversized negative reaction after Die Another Day. And I think they just make it fun. One of the things that I will say to Spectre is that like I think there are an increase of moments of like humor in this film that I really enjoy, right? Like again, we can have some fun in Bond movies. It's okay, right? And I think it's probably the most fun a Bond movie's been since Casino Royale, at the very least. And that is nice, right? It's nice just to be able to be like, yeah, here are gadgets, here's some fun, here's some goofs.
There's a guy
we're gonna get
threateningly pointing his gun at a mouse.
Yeah, and we're gonna get more of the gadgets at the very least in the follow-up movie as well. Trevor, that takes us to the final review and ranking. What was your final review, thoughts, and ranking of Spectre here?
I mean, as I've said a lot, like I was prepared for like just bad. Given like you, especially in talking about the Craig era, you have also with like I knew from general consensus Casino Royale, Skyfall, and No Time to Die were good enough that I went out and saw them at the theaters. And I'd heard general consensus was like Quantum of Solace, you didn't have to see, and Spectre, you didn't have to see. From talking with you, Quantum of Solace has been like it's fine, and Spectre has been it's bad, I don't like it. And I think this is I like this better than Quantum of Solace. I had a better time than Quantum of Solace. It certainly doesn't come anywhere close to the peaks of Casino Royale, Skyfall, and spoilers, I'm gonna like No Time to Die more than I like this one as well. But like this isn't my least favorite of the of the Craig era. So that puts it in the company of, you know, some of the like weaker Brosnan ones of like Die Another Day, World Is Not Enough. I probably will put this above Spy Who Loved Me.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, okay.
Like it below Goldfinger, above Spy Who Loved Me. Like I had a good time with this, and I think a lot of that comes from me not having this like childhood connection to what Spectre was and then wasn't for 50 years and then comes back to become. So like I can just enjoy this for like this fun idea of there's been somebody behind pulling the strings on all of Daniel Craig's, you know, adventures so far, in the same way that by the time Thunderball rolls around and You Only Live Twice roll around, you learn that somebody has been pulling the strings on all of Connery's adventures too. So like I prefer Christoph Waltz to Donald Place or whatever.
Donald Place, yeah. And you also just didn't have that experience as a child too, right? Like it's totally that thing, and that's what makes this such a fun show, right? So like that updates. Spectre becomes, I think, 7th on your list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th on your list now is gonna be Spectre, with Spy Who Loved Me and Die Another Day rounding out the top 10. We'll go through the whole list a week from now. This is gonna become the one that I think we disagreed the most on. Super fun. This and Thunderball. I don't like Spectre. I think I like individual parts quite a bit, right? Like I like Hanks. I like the fact that it's more humorful. It brings back some of that. I think the pre-title sequence is really fun. I prefer this and Skyfall's ending to the actual ending we're going to get for the Craig era, as a little tease to next week. But I just think, like kind of said at the beginning of the show, I think the kind of individual elements don't add up to like a cohesive thing for me. I think in some ways a really good comparison is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, right? Which I think is a, you know, good movie, but I would rather almost watch any Bond movie before I get to that one, right? Like I just don't think it's like an enjoyable, fun one for me to watch, right? And like I don't think Spectre is the worst Bond movie, right? Like Man with the Golden Gun is clearly the worst Bond movie. Or Moonraker for that matter. For Your Eyes Only is a good.
For Your Eyes Only is for Your Eyes Only and Thunderball are at the bottom of my list.
Right, and those are all pretty solid contenders. I think I like Thunderball a bit more than you, but all the Roger Moore ones are pretty solid contenders. But I guess I will say
like going back to mine, like I don't think I didn't consciously realize that when I was putting this above Spy Who Loved Me, that Spy Who Loved Me was a Roger Moore one, and it is the top ranked Roger Moore one of my list. So yeah, it's like spoilers. Like the only Craig Bond movie below a Roger Moore movie on my list is Quantum of Solace.
Quantum's a mess, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this to me is the worst of the Craig era. It's the worst in like the modern Timothy Dalton onwards era of Bond, I think. I think I can say this is like in the run for me in the Bond movie I would least want to watch again, right? But I think it's better than
which is
Man with the Golden Gun and Moonraker.
blows my mind, and you just have terrible taste in old movies, I guess. That you would rather watch like this than like Moonraker or something.
Oh no, Moonraker I definitely
sorry,
would not
rather
want to
watch
watch
Moonraker
again.
than
I said it's
this.
one of
Okay.
one of the runners. Like Moonraker for sure, I never have to watch again in my life. I do not like again because like I said, 10 weeks ago at this point, more than that maybe. I think the last act of Moonraker is my least favorite thing in any Bond movie. I think it's like really really bad when they go to space. I can't emphasize that enough. Ultimately, I would put this in the same category, like same camp as like Quantum, A View to a Kill, Thunderball, Octopussy, You Only Live Twice to me. Right? Like I probably should have put my list anyway, but like
I was gonna say, how does that feel knowing? Because like when we started this, like You Only Live Twice was it's your favorite like childhood one. How does it feel that You Only Live Twice is like so far down this list that you're like you're lumping it in with Spectre, that you very vehemently do not like?
I think I think one of the things I talk a lot about is if you really love something, you have to speak honestly and candidly about it, right? And I've tried to always do that about James Bond. Again, I've always been very clear with the fact that like if someone doesn't like James Bond, I get it. I understand the reasons of why you wouldn't. I think You Only Live Twice is actually in some ways a good kind of parallel to Spectre because it's sort of the inverse of it, where I think the first 2/3 of You Only Live Twice are really hit or miss and very shaky, and I think it's got like a really great fun last act, right? And like the volcano layer, which is just like so iconic. And I think I like the first 2/3 of Spectre a lot more than the last act, which doesn't really work for me, doesn't really gel together as much. And so in some ways they're fun companions in that way. And obviously they each are like the reveal of Blofeld in their respective kind of universes and canons. So there's that connective tissue as well. I don't know. I at least was somewhat prepped for it, right? Going into this show, right? Where Skyfall coming out in 2012, Casino around 2006, and like re-looking at stuff in like that time period, like 2012 in particular, when I lasted like a big ranking, I was like, oh, Skyfall is gonna be my new favorite movie kind of thing. So I at least was like ready for like it not to be number one anymore because I already wasn't, or even like number two necessarily. But it's been interesting to see it fall to where it's my least favorite of the original Connery 5, and Only Diamonds is below it now. I just think it's got issues, right? Like I think it's just got issues and it's got problems. And I think, as someone who does think a great Bond movie needs a great Bond performance, I just think that Sean Connery is sort of just clocked out for like half that movie, right? Like he is so clearly burnt out and exhausted, I think, by being James Bond with like the crazy mania that was in the 1960s, that like he's just like, I hate this character. I do not want to be him anymore. I'm not going to come back unless you give me $1 million, which was crazy back, or $2 million actually back then, which is nuts. Like I just think he was done with it. And so I think
it's a lot of the Daniel Craig vibes that you get. I don't, at least for me, like I knew that obviously more behind the scenes. I don't see that necessarily conveyed on screen. I think, like, at least for me, I think Daniel Craig still showed up to do the work in this one. Even if, like, as soon as it was done, he famously went out and said, like, he wants to slit his wrists rather than do Bond again anymore. Movie. But yeah,
I think he shows up. Certainly, I think he shows up more than Roger Moore did in his last movie, In A View to a Kill, or Connery did in You Only Live Twice. Right, like I think Daniel Craig he seems a little bit less interested in this to me than he did Skyfall, which I really do think he had envisioned as like my last one, and then they just kind of were like, you're still under contract for more. Right, like I think Pierce Brosnan and Timothy Dalton have better last movies, but they also didn't know it was gonna be the last movie, it just sort of ended on them, so they have that going for them. And so Craig is sort of like the mid tier of like, this is my last one. Oh, actually he's gonna get one more. And luckily, I think Daniel Craig is really good in his last movie, as I'm sure you agree. But I just think Spectre's kind of a mess, right? Like, looking at my list, I'm also, like, sort of tweaking it around a little bit. But, like, ultimately, I would probably put this, if for no other reason than just, like, my childhood love of it, I'll put it below You Only Live Twice, but above Octopussy, Diamonds Are Forever, Fear Is Only Moonraker, that kind of stuff. If to kind of go back to what I said at the beginning, if only because I think You Don't Live Twice, despite its many issues, at least for me at least, ends on a high and ends on like a good final kind of image. And this one, I think, begins fantastic. That pre-title sequence is like, will be, spoiler, probably my top 10 favorite pre-title sequences when I do that ranking. But I think it just kind of slides from there. So I'd have it just below You Don't Live Twice and above Octopussy in my current ranking. And we'll kind of run through the whole thing next week. Otherwise, that's a show. We will yet again delay Bond on Bond one more week because it's not actually Daniel Craig's last Bond movie. He's got one more after this. But it would have been very interesting if this was his kind of ending arc and his ending moment, like it very clearly, I think, was set up to be. But otherwise, that's the show. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw and heard, you can go over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite, where you should already be on this YouTube exclusive series. Hit the like button. Leave a comment. Tell us what you thought of Spectre. Did you like it more than me? Did you like it less than me? As I know people do. What did you think of Christoph Waltz? What did you think of Hinks and Madeline and all the fun aspects of the movie? And be sure to ring the little bell notification to get notified when a new video goes live Monday through Saturday over there. You can also go over to thatnerdysite.com and check out all the latest reviews, features, content, podcasts going live on the main site as well, in addition to the written review I will have for each movie as well, also over at That Nerdy Site. Finally, you can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trev, anything that you want to plug or shout out?
I will plug That D Plus show this month. Now that we're like so much closer to like all the times lining up, you can find our thoughts on the first couple episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi at like the end of May is when those episodes came out. The end of June, we will do our full wrap up of the series because that's when that will end. So stay tuned for all that and every other That D Plus show that we do, regardless of what the stuff's like. I guess around the time of this, like Miss Marvel's probably out. Our Miss Marvel first episodes are probably out, so you can go check that out.
That's right.
Yeah,
I agree. Go check out all that good stuff. You can find me at LeftyLoggy, at LeftyLoggy, Logggy on the internet. I will echo all those shoutouts. They're all great. Go check out That D Plus show. I was supposed to be on the Obi-Wan Kenobi one, but ultimately couldn't make it. But spoiler alert, I have thoughts. It's okay. So go check out that. I definitely will be on the season wrap up as well, probably on Miss Marvel. I'm actually very excited about that after hearing certain people talk about it. So go check out all those fun things, all those great stuffs. You can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet. We have got podcasts, we've got Let's Plays, we've got reviews, we've got all kinds of content and goodies for you. And go check out all those fun things all across the internet. Finally, for myself, for Trevor, for all of us here at That Nerdy Site and That Bond Show, we will return with No Time to Die.